Welcome, Carm Capriato, the Service Aftermarkets podcast pioneer with the gold standard of aftermarket business podcasts. Join me for Aftermarket Insights as we advance the aftermarket. And as always, know that you'll learn just one thing. Find us on your favorite podcast listening app and remarkableresults.biz or on my YouTube channel. Hey everybody, Carm Capriato, Remarkable Results Radio. I am so darn excited to bring you this episode on, let me see, what do we call this? How to deal with EV fires, or did you know that actual EVs can start on fire, including hybrids? And I reached out to my great friend, let's bring up my panel here, Donnie Hudson from Troy Auto Care. Hello, Donnie.
Hello, Carm.
See, Donnie is the district chief of the Troy Fire Department, but also I think many of you know him as the 2022 Napa Shop of the Year. And you probably know that he's the president of the BDG out there in Detroit. He's in business with his brother Frank, wife Christy. They own 3 Napa Auto Care centers. And I don't know how many tow trucks, but this is the reason he's here, because no doubt that team goes out and does any kind of towing for AAA. Sometimes you have to be very aware of what's going on with that EV if you're towing an EV. And because of the fact that Donnie was the district chief of Troy Fire Department, he says, Carm, you got to have Pat on with me. And also with us is Patrick Durham, the captain of the Troy Fire Department and a mechanical engineer, and also StacheD Training, a wonderful YouTube channel for firemen on how to manage and deal with EV fires. Hello, Patrick.
Hello.
Glad to have you here. I have to tell you a really funny story, Patrick, and I don't know if this is the right way to start this out, but please remember, we're looking to understand what happens when we have an EV client come in. Do we store the car overnight as a independent shop? What do we talk to our customers about? What knowledge do we need to have to explain to our customers how they need to respect and treat their EV vehicle? What about the people who work for us? Are we getting the kind of EV training? And I know that may be often a different type of, zone here. And we've done episodes on EVs from a mechanical safety perspective, but this is about fires, because Patrick and Donnie, they get that whole fire thing. I heard this wild story about Europe, Patrick, and I'm not sure if it was you or someone else that told me they built this big tank and they would bring a crane and they would lift this car and they would put it in the tank in order to stop the fire, submerge.
Yeah, so that is one of the methods that is out there. It seems like it's fairly popular in Europe. I'm not seeing too many people doing that in the U.S. Right now. Does it contain the fire? Absolutely. But the way these batteries burn, it can also cause additional issues once you take the vehicle out of that water.
Like what?
So you start getting corrosion inside the battery. You can start having shorts inside that battery, and that could cause additional fires later on. So you take it out, it's sitting there, it's drying out, and eventually it may catch fire. Kind of goes back to the original Chevy Bolt. Back in 2011, they were doing some crash testing with that vehicle, and it was May of 2011. They pulled it out, they set it aside, it sat at the salvage yard for about a month, and then in June it caught fire, and that was because of corrosion in the battery terminals themselves. If you look at what happened down in Hurricane Ian, I think they had about 20 or 25 vehicle fires after the floodwater was down there. Flooding these vehicles out, not necessarily a great option. On top of that, now you've got this tank full of water. What do you do with that water? Can't imagine you just dump it down the storm sewers. You probably want some type of environmental cleanup company coming in and taking care of the water.
So to answer your question in short, Carm, there is no way of putting those out safely. Like our policies in Troy is we let it burn itself out.
So you're really destroying the car.
Correct.
But do we know that this is a chemical reaction that it really doesn't require oxygen? Am I right, guys?
That's correct.
Pat, why don't you explain to Carm about all the batteries and how they're all separate and they're all sealed?
Yeah, so if you go to, we'll say, some of the original Teslas, this is a battery cell right here from one of the original Teslas. And you've got thousands of these battery cells inside the vehicle. They're all packaged together. They start off, you've got about 400, 500 batteries in a module, and then you've got 16 to 20 modules inside that vehicle. And what happens is one of these battery cells fails, it goes into a thermal runaway. And when this cell fails, it's a chemical reaction. It's exothermic, which means it gives off a tremendous amount of heat, about 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. When this fails, it's heating up the cells around them. Those are thermally damaged. They go into thermal runaway, and it's just this cascading effect that goes from cell to cell to cell. Some of the newer battery packs, you've got a lot of different strategies. Some are no longer the modules. You have multiple cells all stacked together inside one box. You've got other battery cells, the pouch style cells. I've got one here. It's a lot bigger. Now this one is for energy storage, not necessarily an EV, but it's a very similar construction. It's just a lot larger. But they all can have this type of chemical reaction, this type of failure.
So Patrick was telling me, Donnie, that EV should be really towed on a flatbed.
That is correct. That's the only way we will tow those, because the motors will continue to spin. And matter of fact, there's a nomenclature out there for people towing their own vehicles. That transportation mode or transport mode means that you can hook it up behind an RV and tow it. That's not the case. That's only to be loaded onto a flatbed and towed and then dropped. They have lockout sensors now that'll start locking the wheels up if it detects it starts going, at a rate of speed with the engine shut off or with, it not in drive mode. So yes, the only way we will touch one of those is on a flatbed. We won't even dolly them. We'll strictly put them on a flatbed.
And Patrick was also mesmerizing me. We had an icebreaker call, and I figured, Patrick just he laid so much stuff on me.
He does that.
I know. He's amazing. He's amazing. I'm thinking here, if there's damage to the battery in an EV crash and you notice it, he said, wherever that vehicle is going, have a fire truck follow you there. I mean, so my point is let's get together with our local fire departments as shop owners around America and say, what kind of training are you having? Can you come in and talk to us? We'd like to tell you what we're learning. And Patrick, Donnie, are you finding that the education is at a breakneck speed right now?
No, matter of fact, the only education that I know is through Pat, and it's because Pat has taken this under his wing and he made this his priority. Hey, look, he realized there is no training out there for firefighters or first responders, as such as my towing company, and he says we need to produce something. And Pat has vast knowledge in the EV side of that, and he just brought it to fruition. But he needs these other departments and towers and shops need to get on board with this type of training, because it is, EVs are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. They're going to get more and more popular, and there are going to be more and more of them on the road, and we're going to have to deal with them more and more. And so your technicians are going to be, as we're gearing into heavy duty training now on the EVs. We're getting ready to launch some courses through Napa. It's here to stay, my friends, and we got to jump on board. So we need to stay ahead of it. We need to keep our team safe, and we need to keep our facilities safe. I'm still nervous about storing an EV car in over the shop over at night. Even if it's just in here for maintenance, I just have that gnaw on me, just not to leave it inside the bay. Even though it's safe, I'm just not over that comfortability part yet.
Hey, it's no secret. We're facing a technician shortage, and Napa Auto Care has a solution with the Napa Auto Care Apprentice Program. The program was pioneered by one of our own. Pete McNeil and Master Technician Jeg Sorensen from McNeil's Auto Care in Sandy, Utah, realized that the problem of not having technicians available for hire was not going to solve itself and decided to take action and look at a different audience of individuals available for hire. A focus was put on younger individuals with the right passion, desire, and attitude to work in the automotive repair industry. Jake and Pete sought after these individuals and developed a technician apprentice program to give them the training needed to become a successful technician in today's world. The Napa Auto Care Apprentice Program includes a comprehensive 9-stage curriculum that includes a variety of types of training, and they are classroom training videos exclusive to the apprentice program. Now, these videos provide in-depth training from a successful master technician. Also, Autotech classes with instructor-led courses offered through Napa Autotech and Autotech e-learning. This web-based e-learning is designed to target specific training topics. And finally, hands-on learning. The apprentice will apply the skills gained from the classroom training videos, Autotech instructor-led training, and Autotech e-learnings in the shop with the guidance of a mentor. The apprentice program curriculum is competency-based, meaning an apprentice can move through each stage at a pace that best suits them. Most apprentices complete the program within 2 years. Upon completion, apprentices will have earned ASE G1, A4, A5, and AC certifications, adding industry validation to the skills an apprentice acquires. Look, having an apprentice in your shop will ultimately benefit your bottom line as they advance through the program. And in most cases, as the apprentice develops their skill set producing billable hours, you'll begin to see a growth in your gross profit by stage 5. One of the largest barriers to entry for individuals looking to enter the automotive repair industry is the cost of tools. Now, keep your apprentice motivated with an apprentice toolkit. Now, Napa Auto Care has worked with our supplying partners to offer an exclusive comprehensive tool set, including a 4-drawer tool cart for all registered apprentices. Hey, to learn more, members can visit member.napaautocare.com. Donnie just made me think about insurance. And what will your general insurance agent, who maybe will come in, Donnie, and say, hey, let's walk around, let's see what's going on. Will they ever ask you, are you working on EVs? And all of a sudden your policy goes up 50%?
So actually this year, when we were doing our renewal, mine's a little bit different because I have the towing still involved. But when we were doing our shop insurance, that was one of the questions. Do we work on EVs? 1, and do we store them overnight? 2. And I said, we're just starting some maintenance on EVs, but I do not store them inside overnight. So there was not a substantial increase in premium yet. But my insurance adjuster said, and it's unfortunate, but I might as well lay the cards on the table with everybody who is working on them, is there is going to be a surcharge for EVs in the insurance side of it.
Well, Patrick, you're the expert. What are you telling everybody that's in the firematic side of the industry, but you're probably also whispering in shop owners' ears, telling them the same thing?
Yeah, so I think generally speaking, if an electric vehicle hasn't been damaged, hasn't been any type of crash, they should be relatively safe, and there shouldn't be a lot of concern involving the risk of fire or anything regarding basically anything catastrophic happening. My opinion, the risk really increases once that vehicle's been in some type of crash. So that would probably be looking more towards like your body shops or obviously the tow companies wherever you're storing those vehicles after they've been in some type of accident.
So, Donnie, even if a customer comes in with a Tesla, no signs of crash, maybe that's one of the greatest things to ask a client that's coming in every single time.
I just wrote that down when he was talking about that. Yeah, because we don't ask that.
Incredible. So, hi, Mrs. Smith. How's your Tesla? Great. Any accidents of late? It's kind of like when you go for healthcare. Can I see your card? Can I see your card? Can I see your card? They're always trying to find out what's new with you just in case, right?
You're right. Yep. Absolutely. That's a great. I wrote that down.
It's a huge takeaway. If there wasn't any, they told you the honest truth, you would still not keep that Tesla in overnight?
I know. I'm just not comfortable doing that yet.
Okay. All right. I get it. Well, what's your recommendation, Patrick?
Again, if the vehicle hasn't been in any type of incident, any type of crash, I think it would be safe. I don't see why it wouldn't be, especially if you're not charging it in there. Once you start charging inside a bay, especially if it's having some type of electrical issue, the risk increases with charging. I will say there's another area that I've been seeing some videos, seeing some conversation about that has me a bit concerned is aftermarket batteries for these vehicles or vehicles that have had the battery removed, had some type of work done, third-party work done inside the battery. I think that ups the risk as well when you start looking at electric vehicles. The idea of an aftermarket battery going into an electric vehicle really, that really kind of scares me.
I'm shaking my head here. It's a can of worms, Donnie. He just opened.
So on the roadside service of it, so yes, we have our 30 trucks, our tow trucks, and then we also have 17 light service vehicles that do just that. They test the vehicles, and if the battery's bad, they'll install them on roadside. And we are not touching EVs as of right now. Call for a tow truck. We will not send a truck out there.
You can't put an EV battery in an EV car.
Well, they
They're
still run.
thousands of pounds.
Right, right. But they're still like they have backup batteries and they have
Okay, okay. All right, I understand.
those, but I still won't even
Stuff with
touch
12
those.
volt.
You won't
Yep.
even touch them either, like on a hybrid with a 12 volt.
Correct. Right. On hybrid, yes, but not full EV.
Okay. Interesting. You are minimizing every ounce of risk that you possibly have. The liability, really.
Correct.
So the OE batteries, we know that they're sealed against water. And what else? I mean, is it against oxygen too, Patrick? I mean, they don't need oxygen to start. So it's just a sealed,
No.
it's a sealed unit.
Yeah, so
And-
the battery under the vehicle, you're looking really 1,000, 1,500 pounds, somewhere in that range for most vehicles. You've got the extremes like the electric Hummer, that's a 2,500 pound battery, very heavy. But these battery packs are very structural. They're all a little bit different in design depending on which manufacturer is making them, but they are generally sealed. They're watertight. The boxes are designed to be fireproof because they want to keep that, if there is a failure inside, they want to keep that fire inside the box. Some of the new requirements they're looking at right now is if there's a fire inside that battery box, the occupants need at least 5 minutes of warning so they have time to get out of that vehicle prior to the fire getting outside of the box or any signs of smoke, for example. So they should have some type of warning systems, but they do have a breather valve, so to say. So, changes in atmospheric pressure that allows the battery to kind of breathe but stay watertight. They have deflagration vents. So if there's some type of pressure release inside the battery, that can actually be vented out of the battery to keep the exhaust gases going in a safe direction. But again, they're all designed a little bit differently right now.
So I love what you just said about, if you will, a warning system. And Donnie, it goes back to what we need to teach our technicians to watch and listen for. If by any chance it started to gurgle or smoke, is that something, Patrick, that we would be able to hear?
Very likely you could, if you're starting to hear gurgling or starting to see smoke, very likely you're going to have a failure quickly. It's going to be very energetic, and you don't necessarily have a lot of warning as of now.
So I would be afraid to get into that passenger seat, turn that switch on, put it in reverse, get it out of the building. Is there any way you can push it?
So what I'm teaching, at least on the fire department side, if you've got a vehicle that's on fire, electric vehicle that's on fire inside a garage, for example, or next to a house or next to any type of exposure, is to hook up, get the tow company on the way, hook up with the tow truck, get it ripped out of there. If, like for us, we've got a winch on a rescue, or if you got a winch on a brush truck, hook onto that and pull it out of the vehicle, or pull it out of the away from the exposure, out of the garage. I did actually, through one of my videos, I saw a comment from a tow operator that was called by a fire department, and they actually sent that tow operator up to hook up to this vehicle that's on fire in a garage, no PPE, no protective gear at all, to get that out of the garage. And that was just absolutely insane to me. Very, not a very good situation. So if you have any tow operators that are in that situation, have the firefighters hook that vehicle up. We've got the gear to handle it. You want to stay away from those vehicles if they're on fire. There's a lot of toxic smoke, a lot of toxic gas that could be given off. You don't want to be breathing that crap in.
Hey, Donnie, I had this wild idea. We take that vehicle that's in the bays, and when it gets in, we lift it up a little bit and we set it down on these 4-wheel dollies while it is in there. And it's only gets risen up, say, a couple of inches. And while it's in the bays, it's a just in case precautionary thing where you don't have to worry about being able to push or pull or tow or winch out. You just, and that
shove
thing
it out the door.
It shoves it out the door because it's already on wheels. Be like having a hook and the right gloves and all the safety equipment. Part of the safety equipment is quick exit, and that you would set that vehicle down on dollies, little mini dollies.
Yeah, they absolutely, because we have several sets of those. But yeah, absolutely, that's a great idea.
Okay, but you have them, but you never thought of making your
Never thought of that until just now.
protocol on an EV, right?
Yeah.
Again, guys, both of you are the fire companies that are out there that are getting this education saying, oh my God, my pumper just doesn't have enough water on it if we had to go out on our own.
So absolutely don't have enough water. It depends on the department, but we carry about 1,000 gallons on our first due engine, 500 gallons in our ladder trucks that follow behind. And if you look at the case studies out there, a lot of these departments are using 20, 30, 40,000 gallons of water. And the end result's the same. That vehicle, it's burning through the entire battery. It's just taking a lot longer to do that.
So you're trying to drown it.
Correct. But
Essentially, yeah. But it's not really working the way they think it's working. And a lot of that goes back to a basic misunderstanding of what is actually going on inside that battery box.
So have you ever seen a battery drenched in water and it still keeps burning?
So there are some instances where they show the vehicles being submerged in those submersion tanks and they're still burning underwater. I actually have a video from some NASA testing that was done. It wasn't water, but they put these batteries in a vacuum chamber, sucked all the air out. There's no atmosphere inside of that chamber. And that thing still failed very energetically, a lot of fire as it was burning.
It's like a rocket engine. I mean, two chemicals, right?
Yeah, I really equate it to a firework. You take this right here. If this was a firework, you light the fuse and tell somebody, hey, put that out as soon as the fuse goes inside there and explodes. It's not going to happen because this right here, when it does fail, it's failing very quickly. It's tenths of seconds. A few seconds, and this cell is burned through most, if not all, of its energy, and then it's on to the next one.
Wow. I sit here with my mind going racing, Patrick. Like, no doubt that's how you are trying to build your great company, Stache Training, to help firefighters with respecting and understanding EV and how to put them out. Donnie,
Hey,
what's the district of Troy doing to make sure all the firefighters are equipped?
Well, actually, like Pat said, when we roll up to a scene and if it is involving an EV, we make sure that we all have our PPE on fully. We're on SCBA, so we're breathing air. And right now our protocol is if it's not impinging or it's not hurting a structure or an exposure, is exactly yank it out of the way and continue fighting that fire how we normally would. On the EV side of it, I mean, unless anything has changed recently. I know and I was going to ask Pat about this. I heard Shelby Township was trying out these blankets. Have you any word on that, Pat, or have you seen that or know anything about the fire blankets that's supposed to for these EV cars? And
Yeah.
they have.
So I do know Shelby's bought them. They are out in the market. They seem fairly popular for people to purchase. But again, because these batteries don't require oxygen from the external atmosphere to burn, the blanket's not really doing anything. It's not going to put out the fire. Now, it could be useful for protecting exposures. Let's say you do have, maybe you do have a vehicle that's deep inside a shop and it catches on fire for whatever reason. You can cover that vehicle up and at least protect the things around it from hopefully not catching on fire, keep that heat kind of baked inside. But one of the issues with it is these batteries when they fail, they also give off hydrogen, a very flammable gas. And now you have this buildup of hydrogen
Underneath the
very
blanket.
explosive gas underneath.
We're not buying them. I know that. I know we're not getting involved with those. But right now, if it's on the roadway. So Pat, if we had one burn on the freeway, we just let it burn out. If we started applying water for it, you're talking something that's going to burn out 3 to 4 hours, and now we're going to add 6 to 8 hours if we start applying water on it.
Yeah, if you just let it burn, they say anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. If you start applying water to it, it could be up 3, 4, 6 hours. The times are all over the map. A lot of it depends, I think, on the vehicle construction, the actual battery that's burning, what happened to it. So there's a lot of different factors that kind of play into that.
Well, that is fascinating that if you let it burn out, it may not burn as long as if you just threw water on it. Why is that?
Because you're kind of slowing down that cascading thermal runaway effect from cell to cell to cell. You're cooling it just enough to where it's not allowing those cells to fail instantly from one to the next. You're not getting other initiation points elsewhere in the vehicle as well, elsewhere in that battery pack.
So we better just to let it ignite and continue taking the packs out and let it burn.
Is there any, Pat, maybe it was you telling me about some kind of nozzles that maybe could break through that battery case and then just flood it with water? Is that a thought or possibility?
So there are a couple companies selling devices like that.
Like a piercing nozzle.
But the biggest concern I have with that is if you look at so each one of these electric vehicles, they publish an emergency response guide for those vehicles, and I believe every single emergency response guide out there says do not pierce, puncture, or try to gain access to the inside of a battery. So once you start using items like that, you're opening yourself up to more risk. But also, it depends on a lot on how these batteries are manufactured, because now you've got sealed units, sealed modules potentially. If you've got a fire over here and you puncture it over here, you could be opening yourself up to a larger issue.
Right.
There's cross-car structural members inside of those batteries. So if you're hitting one of those structural members, you probably won't be able to pierce it at all. So there's a lot of different factors at play. If you look at the Tesla Model Y, for example, that entire battery pack, they put all the battery cells in there, then they fill the entire inside of that battery box with polyurethane foam. Very similar to the spray foam you buy for like your windows and doors at the big box store. So now you've got this very tightly packed, sealed unit. There's no air gaps at all. So if you puncture into that, there's nowhere for the water even to go.
Wow. It would be like insulation foam that we would use, right?
Correct.
Same thing.
Exactly.
So let me talk the evolution of technology. We have this. Here's the state of our world as it is today. Patrick, have you heard, or Donnie, that maybe in 10 years, the battery fires won't be as big of a deal because technology, equipment, chemicals, maybe they'll even design their own internal, like the hood of a restaurant, that the foam things and, gas comes down and do you ever think that that we will minimize the fire risk in EVs in the future?
I have not heard, Pat. Are they developing, or are they looking into stuff like that?
I think a lot of that goes into battery chemistries. And I know there are different chemistries out there that don't fail as energetically. They do claim there's some chemistries out there that don't fail at all. Unfortunately, they don't have the energy density. They're too expensive, they're too heavy, and they haven't quite worked their way into the vehicles yet. When they do have a breakthrough on the battery chemistry itself, we're probably 5-10 years down the road. But you got to think at that point, we're going to have a lot of legacy vehicles on the road that we're going to have to work through, and
deal with this
they'll
problem.
be around.
Always. So look at, I keep thinking about Donnie having car care meetings with our customers, and we bring them in, and one of them would be an EV clinic. And as we prepare ourselves to make sure that our customers know that we can service these vehicles. And one of the things that we talk to them about is the fact if you're in a crash. So the question to Patrick, I think, is T-bone, front, back. We need to tell our customers, look at, if you have an accident, unfortunately, I hope it never happens, but if it does, you got to get yourself, just don't sit there, open the glove compartment, collect your thoughts, look for your registry, just get out. Is that the proper advice we could give, Patrick?
I mean, that's the advice I would give. Now, remember, these battery boxes, they're very structural with the vehicle. They're designed for the side impact, the side pull impact, the front rear impact, large impacts underneath. So the manufacturers are designing for these types of situations, these types of crashes. And the criteria is a little bit different from OEM to OEM. But a lot of them, I'd say, are 35, 40 miles an hour. Kind of that crash speed. Once you start getting above that, that's where you're going to have issues or more
Structural
issues.
failure. Yeah. Hey, Pat, I was just thinking, Carm, that you just gave me a great idea. So when Christy does her female shop every year, she does that usually in October. Pat, I think, and I have one of my very good customers. He's a Detroit firefighter. He just bought a Tesla, and I think we should have that inside the hoist and have it inside there. And absolutely, because I know, I'm sure that out of our group of women that are through the high schools that go to Christy's shop every year for that. For basic, as we call it, Auto 101, every year we host. I'm sure that, and maybe Pat, maybe I'll have you come join us and just maybe answer a couple safety things. So
absolutely.
That's a good call, Carm. I think we're going to do that.
Yeah, and EV safety, if not a course as much as
just
is just
information.
drop this knowledge on people. and let them be aware. What about road debris, Patrick? You know, there's crap everywhere on the roads. If we hear that clunk underneath the car, should we be worried?
Generally, I'd say the newer vehicles, they're designing for that type of impact. You definitely want to inspect it, make sure there's no large dents or any visible damage to the underside of the vehicle. That's a problem Tesla had a lot of issues with back in 2013. They had a lot of thermal runaways due to road debris, and that could be something instantaneous. Let's say somebody runs over a 4x4 and it penetrates the battery box. It does a lot of damage. You're gonna have a fire right away. But you run over something like a large animal, you get that big impact under there, road vibration, lots of lots of vibration from just driving the vehicle. You could have a fire a week later, a month later. You just don't really know with those vehicles. But like I said, a lot of those issues have been solved. They're putting shields underneath to kind of protect the battery enclosure. They've got design criteria for that underside impact. A lot of work is going into protecting those battery cells.
So another thought, Donnie, thank God you're here, because I just keep trying to get inside of your mind. Digital vehicle inspections, a completely different design for an EV, so that we are looking for these kinds of issues that have to do with the battery while it's up on the lift.
That's absolutely correct. So they don't have a DVI specifically for EVs yet, but it's coming.
But you can create your own.
Absolutely what we do. And we photograph everything. We shoot videos, and that's one of the things is the battery component and the EV components of that is all documented and pictured, just for a couple of reasons. One is if there is a dent or anything like that, we'll immediately notify the customer, get it back to the dealership, make sure nothing's been compromised in any way. More than that, though, is if for the safety for the customer, but it was noted, it was documented, so we didn't do it. It was documented. We told them about it. We made them a notification, but we document all that. We video and take pictures of every EV. Well, we do that every car, but EV, we really go over the fine tooth comb, because there's anything at all that looks out of place, or any dents or anything like that, anything that could be compromised. We always err on the safe side of safety and make sure that's addressed.
So let's ask our expert, Patrick. What should we be looking at while we're inspecting an electric vehicle on our lift, besides the battery componentry?
And the biggest thing would be the battery itself. Like I mentioned before, any large dents, any cracks, anything that shows that you've got some type of penetration into the battery box. Corrosion would be another thing you'd look for.
And the wires.
Depending on where you're at, the wires, absolutely, the connections. Make sure you don't have any type of corrosion, those high voltage connectors, in the battery box itself, the fasteners, if there's any fasteners there, any signs of leakage, water intrusion in the battery if you can see it. Same with electric motors. You want to make sure the electric motors look like they're in decent shape as well, all the wires, connections, that type of thing.
Amazing. Salt, guys, I guess that's it. That's the killer, right? When the hurricane in Florida, apparently, as these vehicles were submerged, Patrick, you may have brought this up in one of your videos, or maybe you mentioned it earlier in the show, just can sit there and a month later starts on fire.
Right. Yeah, and that's delayed fire is a concern with electric vehicles. You get that damage to the vehicle, and then you have that fire. You're just not sure when. It could be a week later, it could be a month later, but delayed fire is definitely a concern.
So if a shop owner has an EV, it had a fire, it's out in the lot, don't bring it back in because of the, again, secondary and tertiary opportunity to start again. I mean, I've seen that in a couple of videos.
Yeah, the recommendation is to take that vehicle if it has damage to it or you suspect there's damage to it, and keep it at least 50 feet away from anything else. I've talked to some companies that they're actually installing the large concrete blocks to basically make a stall for the electric vehicle. Very similar to like at a landscape shop where they've got those concrete blocks. They got the stalls with mulch piled in between, something like that. That way you can save on space in your lot, because I know space is a premium. Interesting,
Donnie, an EV stall.
Yeah, I actually have seen one of those. It's a dealership, and he's repair center, they do a lot of Tesla stuff, and they actually have one built out, just as you're talking about, like a salt bank. You know how they have in
Yeah,
Oakland
yeah.
County, and that they specifically for that. If they get one that's towed in or damaged or anything, they'll keep it there and they'll let it sit before they pull it inside. But one of the other things we have in Michigan, and I don't know how New York is, Carm, but we use road salt on our roads. So wintertime, they salt the roads, and we use sodium chloride as well, and that just attracts. I mean, road corrosion is incredible. Just in my tow trucks, what that does to the wiring hose, that is, not high voltage, but what it does every year. I mean, that's another concern. So we will go through that as well on a DVI, and he will inspect all the cables and connections, like Pat said, and make sure that nothing's green or corroded or starting to corrode.
I have white garage floors in the winter. Yes, Donnie.
Okay.
We
I don't know if it was a sand state or if it was salt.
No, we have salt mines all over New York State, so they just know how to use this stuff out here. Look, is this smart business, or is this just over the top stuff and we're just trying to be overcautious?
No, I think it's great knowledge. I mean, like you said, like your famous words are, if you learn one thing. So I hope your listeners pick one thing up. But no, EVs are here to stay. The threats are real. The cars, yeah, I mean, they're real. They're out there, and I'm fortunate we have Pat on our department, and he's a very good friend of mine to help get this word out to other fire departments, other. I'm actually gonna have him come in to our BDG group and do a small basic class for them, but I also going to have them do a little bit more a little bit high intensity for my drivers who are on the roadside with these. Because like I said, we do tow for Tesla, and we will get them in a crash occasionally. And I think, learning more and more about them, because the fact is they're here and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. Patrick, same question to you. Is this smart business or just over the top? We're just trying to be over cautious.
Well, I think you have to know the risks involved with these types of vehicles. The average owner may never have an issue with an EV, but when you look at fire departments, for example, we respond to house fires, we respond to vehicle fires, we respond to crashes, extrications on a weekly basis, and that's not something the average person responds to. When you start looking at an auto shop, you're getting vehicles in when you're towing vehicles, you're getting vehicles in that are damaged. So once you have a vehicle that's damaged, you've got to do repairs on it. You've got to get it off the roadway. Something has happened that's outside the design criteria for that vehicle, and you've got to understand the risks involved at that point.
Guys, you kind of helped me sum this up, Patrick, by what you just said. And what he said, and Donnie, you know this just as well, that you've seen parts of life that many of us have never, ever seen. And you're going to be overcautious for the sake of us being very, very careful. And these stories that get told over and over again. Donnie, I remember you telling us one about you getting crashed on and your son didn't know you were in the building. I mean, it's just real life situations. And we have to be careful of EV fires and the dangers. I mean, it goes back to, being sure we understand high voltage and we're safe enough to go in, and we've got the hook and the gloves and all the proper PPE. And I said, is this business or just over the top? And the reality is, Patrick and Donnie bring the reality of life and what they've seen in the firematic industry. I mean, you guys have seen more than you could write books on.
True.
And we have to pay attention to what what you guys are seeing, and the education, Patrick. I mean, I think this is, you could be traveling, you could never be home for months at a time to be taking a course like this out to our industry, because the consumer could watch a video of yours, but we need to see and hear you, verbatim. I mean, we need to be subscribing to your channel and listening, and you need to put out EV battery risk training for service professionals, and there's probably only 1 million of them out there that need to get your training.
Yeah, it's just on the fire side, it's kept me very busy in the last couple of years. So.
Wow. I love this. I know we didn't cover it as deep as maybe we should have, but I think we covered the surface enough, guys, to get the brain cells going, have realize as an industry the risks that we have to take on. We've kind of floated some really cool ideas here. So let me go around the room. I'll give you a last word. If there's anything that you'd love to, a point you'd love to make, Donnie, I'll go to you and then Patrick next. Last word, Donnie?
So I just don't be scared of electric vehicles, but just handle them in a safe manner and always be thinking, what if? And that's just how I adapted to working on and servicing them.
Great, man. Thank you so much. Patrick, you can sum it up for us.
Yeah, I really want to echo what Donnie just said. There's a lot of people out there that think I'm anti-EV. They think I'm trying to fearmonger the space, but the reality is these types of incidents can happen, and when you start getting damage to the vehicles, like I said before, that elevates that risk. So being prepared, knowing the risks, that's what's really important, and knowing how to deal with those risks if they happen. If you do have a fire, what to do, what not to do. That's what's really important.
Wow. Excellent. StacheD training, StacheD training. We will put a link to his YouTube channel in our show notes so you can look at the training that he is doing, the videos that he's putting out for firefighters. And there's so much that we can all learn from it ourselves. So thank you what you're doing, Patrick. Donnie, thank you so much for introducing me to Patrick and for convincing him to come on and talk to our industry about this. This was great. Patrick Durham, also captain of the Troy Fire Department and mechanical engineer, and Donnie Hudson, Troy Auto Care assistant or district chief for the Troy Fire Department. Ever since I put that assistant in my mind, I can't get that out.
They changed the term. Yep.
The district chief for the Troy Fire Department. Guys, thank you so much for this. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Carm. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure.